Oh boy, that's the truth.
No,
You know,
but
Melissa, we've lived in all those circumstances. We've been poor as church mice, very tight budgets. We've had big fat budgets. And the truth is, through all of that, we're thinking about the same things, the same values, the same principles, the same underlying concepts. Those drive you. And it's time to get back to that honesty, that purity, that simplicity, and wealth will take care of itself if you do that. If you employ the right principles, success will come. If you focus on money, well, really nothing good comes.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And welcome back to STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I got Mark Teague with us today, and I'm looking forward to this one. I know I look forward to them all, but some are just more looking forward to better more often, and I like it. How's that for a mess of words? Okay, Mark, we're going to keep our tradition, and no one knows Mark better than Mark. So, Mark, backstory, bring us up to speed, then let's get into our conversation.
You bet. It's really good to be with you, Richard. I hope to add value to your audience. You know, the thing that drives me, my passion, is the American working class. And I'll tell you why. I grew up that way. I grew up on a farm and ranch in the middle of Texas, and very traditional, very old-fashioned American work ethic and values. And then my wife and I married in 1986, and we decided to change careers. I earned a doctorate at Oklahoma State in economics, and then went into the banking and finance industry. And through that change, I built about a 30-year banking career there. Through that change from the old-fashioned farm values to the modern corporate world and private equity and everything that brought, some things were just very striking to me. Principles and concepts that I think we need to recapture. That's my passion. That's what drives me in. I'm glad to be with you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, this is, the whole term working class, like that's what I grew up, right? Working on a golf course, man, digging with shovels, just moving earth, cutting grass, whatever. And I kind of, and the thing when you think about it, I'll tell you with me, like it gave me a living. Like no matter what, I was never going to starve because I'm not afraid to work,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
today I also tell people work is work. I don't care if you're on a shovel or you're on a keyboard. Okay.
Yes.
It's work. You got to put in the time. You got to do the thing, whether it's your mind or your physical. It's a good thing. And
Yes.
people don't even there is a big loss of this work ethic. And even on the technical end, like a lot of people don't want to put the time in, like if you're doing something on the keyboard, meaning the computer, you may have to do a lot of hours. Well, a lot of people don't want to do that as well. So I love that you're kind of focused on bringing those values back, but it's really about the practical application of it, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, I'll tell you, you hit a key concept, and I'm very clear on this. First of all, when we talk about the working class, we need to dispense with income. You shouldn't use income to divide it. We need a literal definition. The working class is the class that is working, and you work from there. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter if you have a little and you're trying to grow that, or if you have a lot and you're trying to maintain it. The principles are the same. You stand on the same principles. Some of the actions may differ, but the concepts and the principles, and therefore the social actions and attitude, and particular public policy, it's the same. It's good for all of us. So when you start using income and numbers, you're just dividing us. You're just pitting us against each other. The truth is, if we want prosperity in this country, and we want to keep it, let's get back to the working class. That is the class that is working. Whatever income you may achieve, God bless you, more power to you. You're going to do the same things, whether that's a small number or a big number. The same principles will drive you. That's critical to understand.
Yeah, that's so important. What you're saying is, when you do the income thing, it's just class warfare. That's all that is. It's just like you said, it's all separation. It's haves, have-nots, all that nonsense. That's all lies. That's all just used against you. And I think you're right, Mark. I know you're right. that we have to see things differently. And I think today, more people in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of the veils have been lifted. People are seeing what truth is, what corruption looks like, what lies are and stuff like that, and how it's really deceived us into thinking a different way.
Yes.
Boiling it down to the working class, being the class that works, I think is a really powerful way to what would you call it? Synthesize it, like just bring it together and like be
Yes.
that,
Yes.
because I'm that way. I mean, work is work, and I always tell people this, and I think we're on the same page with this. I said, listen, God put Adam in the Garden of Eden, the perfect Garden of Eden. And what was the first thing he told him to do? Get to work. Okay.
Yes.
Take care of this place,
We're
right?
Made to work.
Yes. We're made to work. That's
yes.
it. That's it. And that's for me, that's my base, right?
Yes.
The word of God, the beginning, you're talking the beginning. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm like, working is good. Working is good for you. There's a great saying I love. Only a laboring man knows, what is it? Only a laboring man knows the man, I forgot it now. The, only working man can have forget it. I'll come back. What is it?
We'll come back to that.
Sleep. Only a labor man knows the sweetest sleep is on the pillow of a clean conscience, right? Like it's that thing, right? Like it's that hard day's work. Again, putting in the time. That's what the reward is. There's reward in and of itself. It's not dollars.
No doubt.
It's not status. It's not rank. It's none of that stuff. It's the ability to work, right? And put out, produce, and accomplish. To me, that's
absolutely.
Okay, we're done. That's it. I'm going. I said everything I got to say. It's all good.
Oh boy, that's the truth. Melissa, we've lived in all those circumstances. We've been poor as church mice, very tight budgets. We've had big fat budgets. And the truth is, through all of that, we're thinking about the same things, the same values, the same principles, the same underlying concepts. Those drive you. And it's time to get back to that honesty, that purity, that simplicity, and wealth will take care of itself. If you do that, if you employ the right principles, success will come. If you focus on money, well, really nothing good comes. But if you focus on objectives and bedrock principles, very good things come.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. So I'm gonna get right into your book. Let's talk about your book.
Yes, sir.
Because I love it. I was going through this stuff, all the everything from bullet points to other stuff inside there, man. It's some great stuff. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir. Here we go. A working man's guide. Here's a picture of it. You could go to the website and get a lot of information. www.thetitle, A Working Man's Guide. Just drop the apostrophe, keep the .com. You can order straight from the website. And essentially what I've done there is with that perspective, that experience that Melissa and I had going from old America and then through the modern corporate world and what it took to succeed there. Some of those principles were just so crystal clear. I wanted to write them down, make them accessible to everyone. And it basically becomes a roadmap. I'll start in chapter 1, key principles that are not negotiable, that we must have, we must employ. And then I step through applying those principles to all the key areas, all the major areas of life that a working family will face. So it becomes a roadmap for the working class family to find strength, find success, and to make it permanent. And the truth is, America is a working class nation. It has always been a working class nation. We will always be that. And we just need to embrace that, accept it, be very proud of it, be very open about it. And in the end, if we adopt those attitudes and those public policies, I see no end to our success as a nation. We can be prosperous and free with no end, no limit.
Yeah, I agree. Here's an interesting thing you said, because you see these principles, you write them down. Okay. Those are two good things. And then you got to keep coming back to them. I think the important thing that we tend to lose is we don't go back and re-examine kind of what our foundation is.
Yes.
I think that's where most people get lost, because they think they're supposed to create something new. I'm going to do it my way, my truth. My truth is my truth, your truth. They don't get that there's one truth. Okay. And they can build on that, but you do need to come back and revisit this stuff and just to reassure yourself you're doing it the right way. because these are your
Yes.
guide stones, right? These are actually your guide stones, and it's important to understand. So I just want to hit those points because I myself had to do that. I raised six
Yes.
kids. I got to do the same thing. I got to teach them all this stuff, and and now I'm watching what they're becoming because of those principles that we raised them on and everything else, and I'm very excited for them because they've
Yes.
all got the work ethic. They're all working.
Yes, sir.
They're all one's in the Marine Corps, right? The other ones they're all working. They're making great money. They're doing things even at 17, 18, 19 years old. I love to see it because we instilled these principles in their life, right? Because I'm not going to tell them what to do, right? I'm not going to
Yes.
tell them you have to be this
Yes.
or that, but the principles are what never change. And you take them wherever you
Yes.
go, regardless of the career or whatever you're doing. It's so good to remember.
That's a fact. In fact, that's an eye-opening insight that everyone should consider is the new part, the unique part is your application of age-old principles. And if you stand upon those things that have been true since time immemorial and will be true long after you're gone, if you strive to understand those and recognize those and then apply those in your life, well, that is new. That's unique. It will be successful because it's solid. It's based on something that predates you and will outlive you. That's a key part in life. So it's both new and old, but the old part of the principles, the new part is my application of it through life. That gives you clarity of mind. It gives you resilience, gives you perseverance. And everyone needs a North Star. You need a guidepost. You need a bedrock. You need a foundation to stand on. If you want just yourself, some would say that it's just you. I find that to be inadequate. I'm deeply flawed. If you just depend on you, that's a flawed structure. It's not going to hold up. I need something more than that. I need something deeper, broader, something more permanent than that. And I think in those terms, and once you discover that foundation, you stand on that, the actions you take, they have.
Yeah, I love it. I always tell people my first 20 years in business, it was all up to me. Guess who failed? Me.
Exactly. Yeah.
If people wanted to help you and everything else, you don't want to take that help, or, I wasn't really leaning on those things. I had them in me. But here's the thing, and this is really interesting, Mark, because of what you said. So 20 years in business, coming out of the Marine Corps, I started working for myself. I built this great business, supposedly, I'm doing all this great stuff. I just did my principles. Like I had them pretty dialed in, but I never thought about them. They were just part of who I was. And I think part of the problem, like we mentioned a few minutes ago, was I never looked at them and go, what am I actually doing this for? Like,
Yes.
Why do I do this and why? And I'm like, well, because my dad's a hard worker. I got a work ethic. And I wasn't able to really define the principles that I was living by, even though they were primarily correct. Okay, I was missing a number of things, but I had a lot of the good things. And that's why I really like that. You got to go back for that. It's that glance and glare, right? We glance backwards, but we kind of stay focused on the front. But we got to look back once in a while to see where we're from,
Yes.
and it's that,
Yes.
it's like, I just want to encourage people, like, that's important. If you can't
Yes.
define where you're from, what built you,
Yes.
like what other principles you stand on, what do you actually believe in? And we get in these discussions a lot with different people,
Yes.
right? Like
Oh, boy,
whether they're, yeah, take it away.
Well, that's the truth. This is a time in America when we are looking back. We realize that, this didn't all start 2-3 years ago. This country's been around a while. The things that work, there are eternal values embedded in that. And that's the key to my book that Melissa and I have that experience where you need to reach back to the old fashioned values of America and then have a modern application of those values. There's tremendous strength in that. And that is the theme of the book. I would encourage everyone to grab a copy and take a look. I think you'll be encouraged by that. What I would really like to do is to have people that are struggling. They're struggling with the problem. They don't know what to do. Something seems bigger than they are. They can't get a handle on it. I would like for them to come into the book that way. I think they'll leave with confidence. They'll leave with a clear mind. Say, now I know what I'm going to do. I have a plan. I have tools. I have strategies I could use. And that's the effect that I hope to achieve.
Oh, that's great. Because we all need some direction, right? So again, we've got all different levels of business people on, listen to this podcast, all different levels of success, from startups to guys who are, tapped out at 7, 8 figures. They've got the great finish, and maybe they're on to the next thing. And sometimes we wonder, why. Like, well, what did I actually do this for? Why did I spend all this
Yes.
time doing this? And what do I have now? I have a pile of money, or I don't have a pile of money. I have nothing, and I spent a lifetime doing this, and I feel like I've got nothing, So what was I doing? And it's kind of what's the center, I mean, you address that in your book, right?
Yes.
You kind of dial into that.
Yes, I do. Yes. Oh, I do. That, well, what you're describing, it speaks to a very deep need in the human heart, the human mind. That's a need for purpose. We need an objective. We need to know why we're doing what we're doing. The human heart is empty without purpose. Well, when you're choosing that foundation, you're choosing that bedrock to stand on, you're going to address that. You're going to get at the purpose, the reason why. And that's why, in chapter 1, I outlined key principles that you need to understand about life itself. In chapter 2, I go into matters of faith. In my mind, rationality leads you straight to faith. It's because of that notion of purpose. It doesn't just get down to very fundamental things. Rationality is going to look around at the world around you. You're going to go out at the night sky. You're going to go to the morning sunrise. You're going to go to the mountains. You're going to go to the desert. You're going to say, so where did this come from? Why does the universe even bother to exist? You're getting at purpose. That leads you straight to faith. You only have 2 answers to that question. It's either a big random accident, which means there is no meaning, no purpose whatsoever, or it's there by design. And if it's there by design, there's a designer. That takes you down a very different path in life, a very different path. And all of life drives every single individual to that question. So where did this come from? And the second question related to that is the human heart. Why does it have the shape and the needs that it does? If this world is strictly blind and random, then how would we even know about the intangibles? How could that produce a need for love, for faith, for hope, for altruism, for nobility, for courage? There would be no knowledge of those things. If life is strictly designed by and driven by survival and the power to achieve it, we would know nothing of those intangibles. They wouldn't even exist. So the universe is not defined by random chaos. I often ask the question, if the universe is blind and random, then wouldn't it be blind and random? It isn't that. There's a very deep intelligence built into it. Same thing with the human heart. The human heart is not random. It is not blind. It is meant for purpose. It is built for the intangibles. It takes a pre-existing intelligence to create those intangibles before they're even known. So before the universe even bothered to exist, before there was a single human being, those things are present. That's not an accident. No way. So when you just ask those simple, rational questions, it drives you to purpose. And you have to answer the question, where did that come from? How did that happen? That changes your life. It changes your mind. It changes your focus. Now you start looking at the deep, meaningful things of life, and you can build everything in your life on that. So I would say to all of your listeners, focus on the intangibles. And then on that basis, pursue the tangibles. Then you have the physical things, you have the objectives, you have business goals, etc. But that's not what fulfills the human heart. It's the intangibles. Build your life around those first, and then pursue the tangibles. You will have a world of fun. You will have a lot of purpose, a lot of meaning, and a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, Mark, too, that's those intangibles, they're decision drivers. Okay.
Yes.
They really they help you make decisions, because a lot of times you make decisions based on nothing. Like you're saying, well, I think that'll be good. Well, you have to know it, right? Like I'm very big on making, very solid decisions. When I make them, I go with them. Okay. If they don't pan out, well, I shift, right? But I'm all in.
Yep.
I don't say, well, I'll go try it. If it doesn't work, then I'm like, no, I'm in. I'm going to make it work. and it may not work, but it won't be for lack of trying, right? But again, I'm basing that on what? When you talk about intelligent design, who's the designer? I had a discussion the other day. I get in these little discussions, we'll call it in our break room kitchen area. So if people start talking random stuff, and it's my truth is, and your truth is yours, and got talking about morality. And I'm like, well, morality. So like, well, their morality is theirs and mine. I go, well, wouldn't that mean there's a moral giver? I mean, you're saying there's morality, like, but who said there is? Like, there has to be a moral giver. This is what you're talking about. It gives them the pause. I go, otherwise it's not moral. If it's whatever you want, it's not moral. Yep. And I use this.
Yes.
My kids are in Boy Scouts coming up. All the changes they've had and everything else in Boy Scouts and everything, right? BSA, whatever they're calling it now. But I said in their little oath, I'm like, and I will stay morally straight. So I raised my hand and go, can you give me what that actually means? Because this organization does not adhere to morality. Tell me what morally straight means when you're doing all the things you're doing, so you people will say these things without a thought. This is my point. What you're saying, they're not thinking like what and you got my kids putting their hand up, taking an oath. Okay. Now, if we go biblical on that, let me go biblical on the oath thing. When you took an oath, I mean, it was fulfill the oath or die. Like it's not, you kept it, right? Even when they're waiting for Paul, being escorted by the Roman soldiers, right? They're hiding by the bridge. No one's going to drink or eat anything until they get him. Well, guess what? They all die because they couldn't get them. You know what I mean? So you talk about the things that we do today when we go back to say what we're built on. An oath used to be a huge thing. It was a covenant, right? I'm just going to bring this forward now to when we do business, right? So we're in business. I have a lot of business owners on here. That's what we do. And when you approach your word, when you're guaranteeing something or telling somebody you're going to do something, you're shaking that hand, that's still an oath. To me, it's like that's, remember used to be, we could do this on a handshake. Can't do that too well anymore, right? We can't get burned on that. But again, if you shake mine, you can be rest assured it's going to be done because I still believe that. Okay. When we press that flesh, man, that's it. If I said it, I'm going to do it, and again, I'm just saying like, then don't do it. Don't say it if you're not going to be able to do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just think that kind of fits in with some of the stuff you're talking about.
Yes, it does.
The application, because you've got a lot in that book. You have jam-packed that thing with lot of great stuff in there. So, like, let's continue kind of down that road, give some high level stuff on some of the other chapters in this book.
Sure. One thing I want to highlight is with your audience, the business minded audience, the entrepreneurs, whether it's executive management or middle management or even employees, the entry level jobs, in particular entrepreneurs. There's chapter 6 I want to highlight for you guys. I developed when I was in this situation, coming with that background, the old fashioned values, the incentives in the farm world are very simple. You don't work, you don't eat. It's very straightforward. You get immediate feedback on the quality of your work and whether you got it done or not. You'll see it within the hour, and your revenue will suffer fairly quickly if you fail to deliver. So that's a very straightforward world. Well, you go from there, and I got into the corporate world. Well, it's anything but straightforward. Every stunt, every shenanigan you can think of, politics, can be far more important than the objectives. And so I'm sitting there looking at that, thinking, well, I need to have a team. I need to reach business goals, results. How do I do it? Well, I found myself reaching back to those old-fashioned values and finding ways to get that in a modern team environment. Well, chapter 6, I developed a technique I call the impact index. And that helped me a great deal in terms of getting a team focused in a high-performing way on the objectives. And here's what I did. The first thing when you walk into an organization, the first thing you're going to see is the org chart. You're going to see the owner, the president, the CEO, who's in the middle management, who the worker bees are, et cetera. And that is a predominant focus in most groups. Well, that has actually nothing to do with whether or not you achieve your objectives and you get your work done. It's, in fact, that can be a detriment to getting your work done, and often is. What actually determines whether or not you succeed or fail is not the org chart, it's the behavior. It's the choices and the behavior of each of the individuals. So what I did was, in this impact index, You just take two numbers, basically. One number is ambition. That's on the top. The other number is capability. That's on the bottom. You create a ratio. So I'm taking this measurement, what I want to do, what my ambitions are, over what I can do, what my capabilities are. And what I discovered is you can clearly define three groups of people. Once you take that ratio, if ambition far outstrips capability, you're going to have a train wreck in your organization. Just a matter of when. And the collateral damage can be significant. If your ability far outstrips your ambition, well, that's wasted effort. You're not producing at the level that you can. So using that measurement and that concept, I would create three categories in my teams. If ambition far outstrips, so that means a number far greater than one, you're a meteor. And I have strategies for dealing with that. I call it a meteor because it's impressive for a while, looks good, it's very flashy. It's going to crash. It's going to burn out. Just a matter of time and collateral damage. A number that's far less than one, those are deadbeats. They're not producing. It's just expense. You're not getting what you need. Well, that's going to drain your P&L. It's going to drain your balance sheet, and your business will fail. You want true professionals. You've defined your business objective. You have your goals. You are hiring skills toward those goals. Now you need folks that have balanced their ambition with their capability. They're even on those scales, and they have the skills you need. Now that's a high-performing team. You will do amazing things with a team like that. So I built an entire management technique around that. It was very helpful to me. It helped me out a great deal. So I would encourage your listeners to check that out. In particular, it's chapter 6 out of the book, and I think it'll help you a great deal.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's, selecting the team, right? Like a lot
Yes.
I'm not into sports very much, but people who are, they're all about the draft and picking the team and who's getting who, and they know everything about them and all that kind of stuff. And a simple thing like you described, they can't apply any of that at their business. What's funny, they know everything about this player, this guy, and this team, and this guy, and this coach, all this stuff, and you go to their business and like, you've got none of this. You don't know anything about who's on your team. Okay, you're spending all your time on these clowns who playing in a stadium for an hour a week or whatever, and you're like, so and I'm being a little rough, but I'm just saying that you're not putting the time in to select who's doing the most important work, and that's running your business. Creating purpose and profit and impact and everything else, and they're the means to your freedom.
Yes.
But you're not paying attention, like you just said. You don't understand who's on your team. That's that's a huge oversight. You just think it's numbers. Oh, you got a pulse, you can work for me. You got a little bit of skill, you can work for me. I'll train you up. It doesn't work, right?
I'll tell you what, Richard, another idea that's critical is to understand the force of economic history that's behind us that brings us to the place we are today. And once you understand that, you see how important teamwork is. And it's basically like this. You can look at a stage and phase approach to economic development. Pretty much every developed nation has gone down a similar path in terms of humanity itself started out in a tribal nomadic phase, the hunter-killer phase. You hunt, you track down what you want, you move by tribes. Then we move into the agrarian phase, the cultivation of crops. It proved to be a more stable food supply. So now you get cities, you get trade, civilization starts to develop. Well, we go from that into the Industrial Revolution, and then we go to the service economy. Then we go to the knowledge economy, which is where we are today, and we go forward from now. Well, if you look at that history, that's many, many thousands of years. There's one thing that is very clear in the workforce. That is the introduction and now the permanence of teamwork. If you go back to the tribal nomadic, that was very much of the individual. The agrarian was very much the individual, and I grew up in that. Now you get into the Industrial Revolution, it's kind of mixed. The teams now become very important, very prominent. You go into the service economy and the knowledge economy, you won't get anything done without a team. There is always a team involved. So now as we look forward, I think the future economy will be defined by space. We're going to explore this universe around us. Teamwork. Teamwork will be a part of the labor force from now on. So for all of us out there, entrepreneurs, laborers, whatever we might be, You need to be good at teamwork. If you're a business owner and you're not thinking in terms of managing a team, your chances of succeeding are very low because it is an inherent part of the economy that's been driven by thousands and thousands of years of human choices. It's going to be with us from now on. Get good at it. Build the skills to manage a team. And I wrote an entire chapter on that. I think you'll find it useful.
Yeah, the team aspect is really critical. I had a guest on, or maybe I was on her podcast. I don't remember too many, but we were talking about, I just stopped using the word employee pretty much altogether. It's always about a team. They went from, employee to associates, which is stupid. That was like placating them. Here, you have a title.
Yeah.
You're an associate to what? Yeah, it's just a bait and switch, right? But team is different. Team is different because a team is about performance.
Yes.
That's what a team is. When we do, how do we work? How do we win? How do we win as a team? We got different players on a team, right? So we understand who do we need here in this position, and this position, and that position. So again, pulling from that former sports analogy I used, at least think about it that way. At least put that, like, build your own team. Forget about these guys they don't care if you watch or not. The guys on your team care if you're paying attention, right? You're taking care of them. And, remember, you signed the front of the check, they signed the back of the check. Okay. They care. Yes. Okay. So if you get involved with that and you build that team and you get guys who can work together and build that productivity and have that purpose, that's the game changer for your business and their lives. So that's pouring into people and not just having them as a cog in a wheel. When you talk about the Industrial Revolution, they're all about a cog. Okay.
Yes.
They didn't give a rip about you as a human being. They literally did. And you look at the school system and everything else is all made to feed that machine. Right. Well, we have the opportunity today, and it's been proven again and again and again, to do exactly what you're talking about. Take these teams, build these people, find the individuals that fit so they can work together. I tell people, it's just like marriage. My wife is not like me. If she was, one of us wouldn't be necessary, right?
That's
I wouldn't
a
need
fact.
her.
Yes, sir.
I didn't marry me because I couldn't stand myself. Two of me would be weighted as one too many. That's all I can tell you. I like one. But it's really that focus, Mark, on building a team in your business, and it's pouring into people, right? It's really investing time and resources, right? Because I always talk about, I can get people competent, but we want to elevate them as people as well. If you're not elevating them as people and making them better human beings, okay, you have an inanimate object almost, right? You just want them to come, put A into B and go home. Well, we don't do that anymore. Yeah. That just doesn't work.
Nope.
It's a failed
model.
That's right.
And I'll tell you, Richard, what I found, the key to all of that is focus on the underlying behaviors. And when you're doing that true professional employee that's bent that way, they will understand. They will connect. They will lock arms with you and get things done. Once you start to focus on that underlying behavior, then that's when you build folks up. You have very clear purpose. You have very clear communication. And above all, you have integrity. Because underneath that impact index, you have to be honest. If you want to take care of that meteor behavior and that deadbeat behavior, the first thing you have to do is get honest. You have to be honest with yourself and then honest with people around you. So the impact index gets underneath the organization stuff. It gets down to behavior. There's something underneath that it stands on. That's character. It rests upon character. So these things take us back to the foundational things. And I think it's a good time in America. I'm very happy, very optimistic. We go back to the bedrock things, the things that work. We will solve any problem that's in front of us because we have something to stand on and we have the will to get it done. It's a good time to be alive, in my view. Very good time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think as business owners, really, it's on us to make this change. There's no really, you're in such a position of influence. Again, 5 employees, 500, I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
You're in a position of influence that I think as I talk to more and more business owners and I work with them and coach them, they don't have this realization. They don't understand the power of the tongue.
Yes.
Okay. They
That's a
don't
fact.
get it. They don't get, like, guys, you can change your community with your business, with the people that are working for you. Again, 5, 50, 15, whatever it is, you increase them as people. You build these foundations on them. You reinstill these principles in them. And that's how we operate here. They'll agree with it because they'll see it works, and they take that home. And at home, they share with their families, and their families are in the community. That's the ripple effect you have as a business owner. You know,
Yes.
you end up, you're affecting way more than just those under your employment, right? You really start to go out, and that influence is seen and recognized, and it elevates you, the respect for you and your business. And again, doesn't matter how many people you have on your team, you have a level of influence, and you need to understand that.
Yes, sir. I'll tell you something else, Richard. There's a key point that separates the folks that will understand, that will come to an understanding, and those that will stay in a fog and never understand it. And it's this: the key part to stress, handling stress, managing stress, and solving problems is to simplify. When you're facing a stressful situation, first of all, take a problem, break it down into its components. Never let 4, 5, 6 problems bind together, because that's unsolvable. If you break it down into its components, prioritize, work on 1 or 2, 3 at the most, work down the list. Now you're going to get something done. You have a solid chance to achieve. So those that get that clarity of mind and they start to focus on the right things, they're doing that. Break a problem down, break it into its components, work on the most important, do them 1 or 2 at a time, 3 at the most. If you've let problems conglomerate, then it's a big blob. It's going to beat you. It seems unsolvable. And those are the ones that stay in a fog. They never understand the importance of leadership or building a team, because they've never broken it down to see those drivers, the things underneath that will take you to success. That's a key to problem solving. It's a key to stress management. If you let things group together, you're always overwhelmed, and you will fail. Life will run over. If you break things down, you have a good chance to get it done.
That's all we have. We call it the win principle, right? What's important now?
Yes.
If I'm
Yes.
on the 3rd story, I'm in my bedroom, and now the building's on fire. What's important now? Get out of bed. What's important now? Get to the door. What's important now?
Yes.
Check for heat. Every step
Yes.
broken down
Yes.
into simple tasks will continue to
Yeah.
move you forward. So it's
Yes.
and we want to train people to think that way, right?
Yes, sir.
Breaking it down to little bite-sized pieces.
Yes.
Here's a problem. Here's some solutions. Here's some suggestions.
There you go.
Here's what I'm in. Okay, I could do this. I could do this, or I could do this. Okay, I'm going to go with number 2. Start doing number 2. What does that look like? Start doing that. Doesn't work?
Yes.
Recheck, reposition, right? So I love it. I mean, these are, again, basic principles.
Well, they're critical. That takes your stress levels down. It takes your productive capacity up. It gives you a shot. It gives you a chance. So you need to understand, even if that doesn't work from time to time, you're going to learn. You're going to get better. It's the difference in having a good chance at succeeding and having no chance whatsoever. Because if those problems bind together and you're in a fog, you have no chance.
Yeah.
It's not like that might work. No,
Yeah.
it definitely won't work. So take the discipline, mental discipline, break them down into components, prioritize, frame those problems, work against that frame, that you have a good chance of getting something done. And even if you fail, you will learn, you will be better next time. You come at it again. That's a good life.
Yeah, I always tell people action alleviates anxiety. It's
Yes,
taking
sir.
action, it's making a decision. It's that
Yes,
lack
sir.
of inability to make a decision, which causes a lot of anxiety. Not for everybody, but a lot of times it's like we need to move. Again, small steps and do it. So I love it. That's a key takeaway for this whole discussion. Again, if people took one thing, that's something that's going to keep you moving forward.
Yes, sir.
And it's the little steps, just one after another, that consistency, getting into that mindset, that train of thought to operate that way, things become simple. They become simple for you because every complex system is built of simple systems that are then combined.
Yes.
So we just
Yes, it
reverse
is.
engineer what you were saying, right? So
Yes.
if again, you're overwhelmed, Well, you're looking at the whole big problem. You got to break it down.
Simplify.
Yep.
Yeah. I tell you what, Richard, there's another point that's before that, and it helps define and explain a lot of the social nonsense that we see these days, and entire groups as seen dedicated and destined to fail. And here's the thing, your view of life, how you see life itself. You need to accept the fact that life is a series of problems. They're going to come at you one right after the other. And if you accept that, the first sign is humility. Now people can depend on you. You are reliable. If you accept that fact, now you're going to develop strategies and skills and tactics to be a very good problem solver. Well, here's the alternative, and this will ring true with a lot of folks you see these days. I don't accept the fact that life is a series of problems. I think that's a hassle. That's beneath me. I'm too good for that. There's an immaturity and a selfishness there. If you're in that mindset, you're not an adult, you're a child. You're not ready for life. Nobody can rely upon you. Nobody can depend on you because you're self-centered. And at the first sign of stress, you're going to check out and blame somebody else. You will be a victim for the rest of your life. So that's the choice we have in front of us. Are we going to be problem solvers and therefore achievers and therefore a mature, responsible people? Or will we be children, perennial victims, always blaming somebody else for things that go wrong? And that's your choice about the nature of life itself. Life is a series of problems. Accept that. Get good at solving them. You have a chance of success. If you reject that, life's going to roll right over you, and you're going to spend your life navel gazing, blaming somebody else. And I think we can clearly see that in the world around us.
Yeah, I think to that point, what people have to do is they have to try it once. Try to solve some problems. Stop being a victim. Stop being, like, you just have to do it one time and you go, oh, wow, they're right. That kind of works.
Yeah, that
do
works.
it again and do it again.
Yeah.
It's like they just sit there frozen.
Get started.
And wallow in their pity. You know what I mean? It's just like you
Yes.
and we all go through it. I'm here to tell you, I don't, every day isn't amazing for me. Okay. I mean, there's days that they're horrible. Okay. But I get up, I do my thing. I go through my rituals. I start my day. I do everything I normally do. And then I go, again, little things. And I start to make those changes and try to move forward. You know?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It wasn't the best day, but it also wasn't the worst day because I took action. I was able to move forward. So again, back to the principle, it works. Okay. It's going to work even in the smaller application or a portion of the application, you're going to see it works. Right. So we want to just continue forward. So I love that. I love that insight, Mark. Good stuff. So tell me, let's go into kind of been through a good part of the book, but I think, and I love that you use there's one thing I want to hit on. You got your PhD in economics. Economics is the view of the past. Okay. It's looking at the past things that happen and then applying them forward. Okay. What could it look like? So we learn from all those things in the back. Now that can be an advantage if you use it correctly, right? It also can be a disadvantage.
Yes.
Like talk about that because I'm not a PhD in economics. I don't have to struggle. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You actually know this stuff. So how do you take that? How do you take that past experience, that knowledge, that study, okay, and apply it to things going forward?
Well, I'll tell you what, Richard, you just hit on a key point that will separate good policy from bad policy. And we currently have some results. Our national debt is a result of bad policy and bad thinking. Let me tell you, this can get technical. I'm going to describe it in layman's terms. There is an aspect of economics that is deeply embedded in choice. The choice of consumers, the choice of producers. The consumers being, what will I consume? What will I purchase? How will I set up my budgets, etc.? Producers, what will I produce? What will I invest in? How will I make an earning, an income, etc.? The best part of economics has its theory and its roots deeply embedded and wrapped around that idea of choice. The worst part of economics ignores that, strictly looks at historical facts, and then tries to manipulate policy around that. It's the difference in microeconomics and macroeconomics. Now, let me introduce a couple of terms. The entire school of thought around the poor choice in economics is built around something called Keynesian economics. John Maynard Keynes. He built an entire theory promoting public policy. That is a failed school of thinking because it does not embed itself in choice. Well, economics is all about choice. That's the only thing that drives the entire field of study. It's people making choices. How will I consume? How will I invest? How will I produce? That's what the field specializes in. Well, if you ignore that heart of it, you're a wizard. You're a fake scientist. You're concocting these potions that don't turn out so well. That's how we've gotten a $36.2 trillion debt as of now and counting, because of these concocted economic theories that do not focus on choice. Well, there's another school of thinking, the Austrian school of economics, Hayek, Milton, Friedman, etc. It's deeply embedded in choice. Well, that's the correct way to go. That's the proper way to go. And if you embed yourself in that and follow that line of thinking, you will come up with very good actions, very good policies, very sound, wealth producing, quality of life increasing approaches, versus economics that's just feel good nonsense and has no root in a reality and is a demonstrable hoax. Keynesian economics, I spend quite a bit of time on that as well, it is a hoax. There's no question about it. And in fact, Keynes himself knew its weakness, and he just kind of stepped around it, and he got away with it. It was offered, during the 30s, the Great Depression, so there was a great emotional draw to have something like that. So part of it was, a circumstance of timing. But the truth is, it was never true. His notions of fiscal stimulus were never true. They will never be true. Even the equations themselves show that to be true. And I lay that out clear in the book. We need to retreat to what is solid and true in economics, and that's microeconomics. It is based upon human choice. That's the proper way to go.
Mark, so I totally pulled that question out of my hat. Okay. And you knocked it out of the park. Super simple. That's a way better answer than I thought I was going to get. I love it. So thank you. Sometimes these things just align. It's so good, but I love it. I love it. I love it. So that's a big takeaway for people. And I'll take it a step further and apply it to business. I mean, what is business? Business is all about choice.
Yes.
We're dealing with consumers, like they have to make a choice. I teach that. Why would they choose me over them? Why do people pay me twice as much as they pay you? Well, because I deliver 4 times the value. I give them a reason to choose me.
That's so exactly it.
That's what we do. So it's like and we're back to basics here. Is that complicated? I offer 4 times the value. I get double the price. That's really complicated. And if it's not hard.
You never escape the fundamentals. Yeah.
Right. And
They're
you
true
just,
forever.
and that's right. Stick to them and apply them.
Yes.
Like know them, apply them. I think that's the big
right.
thing here, right? This whole, if I put all of this under one umbrella, know the basics, know your principles.
That's fact.
And apply them. Okay.
Absolutely.
It's like that. And you got the book, you got the roadmap to put this stuff together in a lot more detail than we could ever get to in this hour. But I just want to encourage people to take a look at this book, to get this book from you.
Thank you.
And really go through this, because there's so much. I love the title. Okay. People, and why I want people on, I want to talk about their books and stuff like that too. And not everyone writes a book. I've written a couple of books and whatever, but it's because people will read a title, like they'll either hate it or love it. It's kind of no in between. But that's what grabs them, right? But then they're making decisions on the title. They don't actually know what's in the book, but they're making these judgments. I have escaped the owner prison, right? So there it is.
Yes.
So what's that, right? So, you got to read the subtitle, but I want people to come on here and hear more of the meat like we just did, so they can go, there's a lot more in there, right? So I want you to get this book, dive into this, because this is going to help you develop your business. Okay. These principles, when you start, again, remembering what they are, seeing them again, this is not something new. There's nothing new here in Mark's book from a principle standpoint, right?
Nope.
You're going back to this stuff. It's the ability to apply it today.
The application.
And to be reminded of it. Yeah. And I love it. I love it. So how can they get your book? How can they reach out to you, follow you, whatever they need to do? Give us all the good stuff.
There are several ways. The main way would be the website, www.aworkingmansguide.com. Drop the apostrophe, Keep the a workingmansguide.com. Lots of information there. You can order straight from the website. All products are available there. It's also available at Amazon, A Working Man's Guide. Also on Barnes & Noble, Indie Books, Indigo, Books A Million. Any major retailer, you can order from them, most of the time online. If you want ebook or audiobook, that would either be my website or Amazon. That's where you'll find those available. So I hope to, and also Facebook, there's a ton of information there. I have a video series going on the national debt, and I keep them short so they're easy to listen to. I have a whole series of them. Facebook, there are two profiles. One is my name, Dr. Mark L. Teague, and one is the book, A Working Man's Guide. And you can get to either one. That full series is there. I break down the national debt, its history, its consequences, how to solve it, how we got where we are. And I would love to help educate your listeners.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Guys, a lot of times it's just about knowing. Okay. Once you know,
yes,
you can apply. You can't apply till you know, but you can't just know. Okay. You can't stop at the knowing. You can't read a book, put it back on the shelf and go about your day. We got to apply this stuff.
No one do.
Having guys like Mark on. Yeah. Having guys like Mark on is just powerful because here's a man who knows and does and is showing you how to do it too. So Mark, this has been fantastic. I appreciate all the time today. This has been a real privilege for the listeners and myself, of course, too. I've learned a lot myself. So thank you for popping by, sharing. We had a great conversation and look forward to maybe doing part 2 and get into more.
Sir.
We couldn't have hit everything in your book. I guarantee you.
No, there's plenty more there.
So, excellent.
Plenty more there.
Well,
it's a pleasure.
Excellent. All right. Well, everybody, until the next STS, we'll see you then. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.